PK in the universe, and I am back again with another YouTube video here. Today I'm here to discuss video game YouTubers selling their video game collections. Especially in the retro gaming community, it's become a very common thing. I've been seeing a lot of videos, a lot of influx of YouTube videos where creators are basically saying, hey, I'm making a video talking about how I'm selling my video game collection. Selling your video game collection. Are these collectors doing it just for the views? Well, I don't know if it's just for the views, but it's complicated, and I think the views definitely play a factor in why people make these type of YouTube videos. But let's go into why somebody would sell their collection. I think one of the reasons I see, of course, is sometimes these YouTubers have been, collecting for a long time, and maybe they're a little strapped for cash. Maybe they're not telling you that. Maybe they aren't. Maybe they're just fine. That could be a reason, because they're strapped for cash and they're like, what am I doing with all this stuff? I'm sitting on all these video games that are so expensive, because a lot of people started collecting, maybe 10 years ago when games were a lot cheaper. I remember getting a game like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters when that game was $50. It's more money now, obviously. And then I think about other games that I got when they were just dirt cheap, and now all of a sudden they're, oh, this is really expensive. Why am I holding on to this? I remember I used to have a Miracle Piano, complete in box, Sega Genesis version or whatever. It was complete in box. And I remember getting it for like $10 at a Goodwill or something, and then later on selling it for like $500. It was ridiculous. But at the time, yeah, I needed the money more than I needed that Miracle Piano that I was not playing. So I was like, the money interested me. In fact, I was going to college actually at the time. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? I need this money more than I... So yeah, I sold it. Sometimes you have things in your collection that you're just like, why am I sitting on this thing? I'm not enjoying it. So I think a lack of enjoyment for certain games has a factor and plays a factor in it. I also think there's some YouTubers who maybe went for a complete set, or were going for a complete set of something. It might be the Super NES, it might be the NES, it might be the Genesis, it might be the Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, Virtual Boy, etc., etc. My personal opinion about going for a complete set of anything is it's complicated, because it just depends. It depends how small that collection is. When it's a bigger collection, it just, to me, looks like a fool's errand. A fool's errand to go after a complete set of something, because at the end of the day or whatever, there's a lot of crappy games. I think that's what it comes down to. There's so many crappy games in these complete sets. You can't honestly say every single game in that collection genuinely makes you happy, or that you would actually genuinely want to play. And a lot of these games mean nothing to you in the grand scheme of things, other than they're part of something, that they're part of a complete set. It is a compulsion in some ways to collect a complete set of something. It can be anyways. I mean, if it's something really small, like the 32X collection where there's like 34 games, I'm like, it's so few games. I mean, it's whatever. It's whatever. I mean, sometimes people collect for the sake of collecting. Like, I think we're all guilty maybe of that, of certain things, maybe sometimes. For example, I love to pick up games for the Wii U, just because it's the Wii U and it's one of my favorite video game consoles. And unfortunately, the Wii U eShop is closing down, which is really sad to me, and I'm going to make some videos actually talking about that this week. I plan to shoot some more videos on that. And the Atari 2600. The thing I love about the Atari 2600 is almost all the games are insanely cheap, and the art on these cartridges looks so freaking cool. I love the classic Atari 2600 artwork on the covers. So that's a system I really enjoy collecting for. Now, I do not enjoy collecting doubles. I do not enjoy collecting doubles of Atari 2600 games, because they're hard to get rid of. Especially when there's something common like Defender or Combat. They're hard to get rid of. So I don't particularly like to collect doubles of things. I don't like to double dip. I try to avoid it. So sometimes, for example, recently I'll show you guys this. I got Final Fantasy 7 and 8. Let's see if I can get a good angle there, where the light isn't shining. Final Fantasy 7 and 8 on the Nintendo Switch. My wife got this for me. I really appreciate that she got this for me, because I've always wanted to try these games out and play them, give them a serious go. I have not really ever given them a serious go. And the thing is, too, I actually own both these on PS1. What do I even need these for anymore? I'm not going to play them this way. I don't want to switch PS1 discs out. I don't want to hook an old PS1 up to a CRT. I don't really want to do that. I'd rather just, grab my Nintendo Switch, pop that cartridge in, and play Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. Also, there's been some quality of life improvements. I guess the games play a little bit faster, like it's easier to get through them. And as somebody who's an adult, somebody who's a grown man who doesn't necessarily have a lot of time, that's convenient and that is great. I love that. I love when they do things that actually improve things, that make the game, easier to get through. So yeah, I'm obviously going to play it on the Nintendo Switch. That's what I love about modern gaming, is there's so many convenient ways to play old games that we could have never imagined maybe 20 or 30 years ago. There's so many great ways to play. So you see these old video games you also see more modern ways to play them, and you're like, why am I holding on to these old games? What am I doing with this stuff? Like, I have a PS1 Classic, I could just, that's obviously hacked or soft modded or whatever you want to call. I can play any of these games that way too. That's another option I have, obviously. The nice thing about Nintendo Switch, of course, is you can play games on the go. So having the Final Fantasy 7 and 8 on the go is great. It's a great option. But it begs the question, why do I still have those games anymore? I don't have any personal nostalgia for them, so maybe I'll sell them. Maybe I'll just get rid of them. I've been planning to get rid of a bunch of PS1 games anyways, so those will go in the bucket. Those will go on the list. So there's a lot of different reasons people sell games. Sometimes, you get tired of having doubles. But I think one of the big reasons I've seen a lot of YouTubers maybe quit is maybe they were, they love the hunt. They were excited for the hunt of finding these games super cheap. They love the thrill of it. There's so many game hunting channels. Nowadays, like Retro Rick. He's got a game hunting channel, obviously, that's very popular. It's one of the most popular ones. And the guys over at Pixel Game Squad, they're always hunting games. That's what they do. This is what channels do. The Game Chasers is like one of the first game hunting channels back in the day. There's a channel called Retro Hunters. I don't know if that channel is still around. I think they started making videos again at one point. I don't remember, like a couple of years ago. But for the longest time, they had a big hiatus. But they were one of those early retro hunting channels. Hunting games is tougher than it was 10 years ago. It's harder maybe to get the good deals. Not that people still don't get the good deals. There's channels that definitely are out there still getting good deals, and they're flipping stuff maybe to buy like a better games with the ones they have. They're like, the idea is maybe like, I start out with $10, and then I try to, turn that $10, I buy a game, flip that game for more than what I got, and then just keep, so you finally get a game you really want. There's a lot of channels doing that. And I think game hunting, is become, it can be a really cool thing. It can be fun. You can enjoy the thrill of finding something at the flea market, finding something at the thrift store. There's so much excitement and enjoyment in that, and it's entertaining for an audience. It's entertaining, even if you're not recording your hunting, it might be entertaining for your audience to see that collection, to see that thing you got at the thrift store, when you explain how much you got it for and what it's worth, and that entertains people, because people can live vicariously through that. They're like, oh man, that's pretty cool. I wish I could get a good deal like that. There's a lot of people like that who are entertained by watching other people get good deals. It's like the show American Pickers. Everybody used to watch that show years and years ago. I remember my parents watched it for quite some time. And it was really fascinating to see these guys get these good deals, and obviously they're doing it with the intent to flip them or fix stuff up or whatever. But yeah, that's entertainment. That's entertaining to people. Also, maybe it exposes them to a game they've never heard of. A video game could be some obscure hidden gem, sure. Or maybe it's just a game that, oh man, I forgot I had that game. I forgot I had Snake, Rattle, and Roll or Cobra Triangle or something. Now I want to go out and buy that, So it inspires people maybe to go buy games. It inspires people maybe to go game hunting themselves. It inspires people to do a lot of different things. So when you're all of a sudden you get burned out of game hunting because the games just become too expensive, the deals keep drying up, you're fighting with people on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist or wherever you're looking for games, and there's people, getting to stuff before you, and eventually people get kind of burned out. They lose love for the game collection maybe. So maybe on some level they're like, well, if I have to buy this stuff on eBay, what's the point? What's the point if I have to buy stuff now to complete my collection? because it was all about the hunt. It was all about somebody like, for example, I think it was like Pat the NES Punk. I remember Pat the NES Punk said that he basically completed his entire NES collection mostly through flea markets and thrift stores and stuff like that. Like, he didn't just go out and buy stuff on eBay. It took him like 10 years to collect. Collecting a complete NES collection isn't as special as it once was. 10 years ago, when not many people were doing it, was special, but then more people have done it since then. So is it really as special? There's a lot of people who've gotten a complete Dreamcast collection. Is that really that special? The sad part too is these collectors who just kind of like, they spent years, countless years trying to go for a complete set, and they just give up and they just sell their collection off to somebody. They took their 8 years of work or whatever, or 9 or 10 or 12 or how long they were collecting. I don't know. However long they were collecting, and they were just like, here, have this. This is my work, but, give me money for it, and it's like, that's crazy. It's really crazy when you see how somebody invested so much of their time to, build this collection. It's kind of shocking, really, when you stop and reflect on it. Like, wow, somebody spent all that time. And what was it for, though? What was it for if you were just going to turn it over to somebody else? I can understand you like collecting for your kids, maybe, because my son, he really loves retro gaming. And I think that's because maybe that's what I've shown him. But there's also some modern stuff he enjoys. We've been playing Dragon Quest Builders. And his first experience playing any Dragon Quest game was playing Dragon Quest on my Nintendo Switch, which is the mobile port. It's not the old NES version, which I do have actually. But so that was a nice little intro for him. And then all of a sudden he gets to Dragon Quest Builders. He's like, oh, this is so freaking cool. It's in 3D and it's some of the same music too, which is really nice. And of course, Dragon Quest Builders is actually a sequel to the original Dragon Quest. It's like an alternate timeline. So yeah, but I love that game because, it's just, swiping your sword. It's like Zelda, honestly. It's like a Zelda game, for the most part, and with a building mechanic. It's so much fun. I made a video about that game quite a few years ago and how I got it on Nintendo Switch, and I recently got it for him on PS4, so he's been getting trophies and things like that, and I just think I really like how it looks. It's a good-looking game, and we can add games like that to our collection. I think it's probably the best time ever to be collecting PS4 games. PS4 collections are easy to come by. There's a lot of games that are incredibly undervalued as far as PS4 games go, because people aren't interested in PS4. They want old stuff. Maybe they want GameCube. Maybe they want Wii U, People aren't having their eyes much on the PS4. Xbox 360 is the same thing. Xbox 360, there's so many cheap, super awesome games you can find. I feel like I, as a collector, have never felt like, oh man, if games get too expensive, I'm just going to quit collecting. You know what I always think? I always think, you know what? Maybe I need to shift my collecting priorities. Maybe I need to find something that's more affordable to collect. I never think to myself, oh man, I can't collect anymore because I can't have exactly what I want. Something like Atari 2600 games will always be cheap. VHS tapes will always be cheap for the most part. There's some things in collections that'll always be cheap. So there's always things you can go collect. But I also think it can go too far. Like, yes, you shouldn't be buying stuff that you will never enjoy, and if you can't find any enjoyment out of it. So I understand why some of these YouTubers are selling their collections. I understand why some of these YouTubers are selling their collections and why they're monetizing it, basically. They see the value in that because they see that their audience might be very well interested in why they are collecting. And I think to a certain point, maybe you should say something, because let's say you're a channel that was all about collecting Sega Saturn games, or you were all about collecting Sega Genesis or PS1 or whatever, and all of a sudden you get rid of your collection and there's no explanation. I get from a certain perspective, it's probably important to address that to your audience because maybe your audience was there for the collection. But maybe they aren't, though. Maybe they're actually there for you. That's the thing. What I don't understand why RGT85 is making all these videos about, selling his collection when it's like nobody cares about RGT85's collection. Nobody gives a crap about his collection, okay? I'm sorry, but people aren't watching him for his collection. They're actually watching him because they genuinely like him, I think, for the most part. I think that's why. Because he's been making videos for a long time. He's, made a lot of videos about Nintendo Switch. He's made videos about gaming news and stuff like that. They come to him for those kind of things. If he never had a collection in his background again, it doesn't really matter because he's established that audience. He's established a group of people who like him for him and trust in him as a source for news and Nintendo Switch deals and, you know, the latest story about what's happening in the gaming industry. They trust him, so obviously they're coming to him for the news. They don't think they give a crap about his video game collection, but they'll still tune in because they're a dedicated audience. There's people who watch every single RGT85 episode because they are dedicated to watching his channel. Is he doing it for the views? I mean, I don't know. Maybe to a certain extent for sure, but I know he had some medical issues a while back, so maybe he's still attempting to pay for that, you know, and I'm not trying to get into that stuff. I'm not, but it's like, you know, obviously he's made that public. I'm not, speculating one way or another, but like, obviously that's the thing about when you talk about yourself, when you talk about personal things that are happening in your life or whatever, it's like you're basically making it your audience's business, you know, it just is what it is. But yeah, I think collectors making YouTube videos, I do think to a certain extent it is for views, but I also think maybe they're just genuinely burned out. Maybe they're tired of collecting and maybe they want to share that with their audience, which is a totally valid reason to make YouTube videos. I understand why they make these videos. I think there's all different ways to collect video games and to have fun playing video games. You don't necessarily need a bunch of stuff in your background for your collection. Like I said, I don't have a collection background. I mean, technically, yeah, there's games in there. There's games in there, but you don't need to see them. Why do you need to see them? It doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously there's like one game up there in my Super Game Boy, but yeah, I don't think people are coming to my channel to see my big collection. And I don't think the majority of people who are making YouTube videos talking about selling their collection, I don't think people are necessarily always coming to their channel just to see their collection. You hope at least that they're coming to these YouTube videos because they want to learn something about a video game. They want to share in your joy and your enthusiasm and your experience with these video games. Hopefully, on some level, they like you for you and not simply because you talked about one specific thing, but maybe there is just one specific thing they come to. But I think we as YouTubers should have the confidence to believe that some people actually just genuinely want to hear what we have to say and genuinely like what we're making and the kind of content we're putting out there. And it's not necessarily just about the games. It's not necessarily just about the games, but what we feel about the games. So anyways, a while back, I actually made a video where it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke actually about selling my collection or whatever. And it was actually in response to, I think it was a YouTuber, Destiny FOMO, had mentioned that she was basically downsizing her collection, you know, but it was clickbait, you know, I'm selling my collection, you know. It was one of those kind of situations where I think she had like bought way too many games and was using a storage unit or whatever to store games, and she was like, what is she doing, you know, charging a credit card, you know, buying games with credit cards and stuff or something like that. And I think, yeah, that can go too far. I think that can go too far. I feel like people should basically collect, you know, with the space they have, you know, otherwise, because if you're storing games, you know, you're getting to the point you're hoarding, you know, and it's like, who's this for? Who's this for? Is this really for you? Are you really enjoying that many games? And the answer is you probably aren't. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with downsizing your video game collection. It's actually a healthy, totally normal thing to downsize your video game collection. It'd be weird if you were collecting every single game and never getting rid of anything that you didn't play, that you didn't enjoy. You know, why keep stuff that doesn't mean anything to you? You know, so I think, yeah, downsizing a collection is totally normal. It's something I think most gamers do. So it's not something I think everyone needs to make a video on every time. It's like, oh, I'm downsizing my collection. I've been downsizing my collection for like 11 years, honestly. For 11 years. I'm always getting rid of stuff because after a while, the stuff doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't make me happy, so I get rid of it. And that's a totally healthy and normal thing, is to get rid of games that you don't enjoy, that don't mean anything to you. So at the end of the day, yes, I think YouTubers are definitely making videos about selling their collection for the views, but I think there's also other reasons that are totally normal and just part of collecting in general. So anyways, what are your thoughts? How do you guys feel about people making YouTube videos talking about selling their collection? Comment below. Love to hear what you have to say. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching and stay awesome in this universe. Thanks. Bye.